You want to know why people look past you, why your voice doesn't hold weight in the room, why others get the respect, the attention, the obedience, and you're still waiting for it. I'll tell you the truth. But understand, once I do, you can never unsee it. You will have to act, and you may not like what you discover about yourself. Respect isn't given, it's taken, and the 1%, the real elite, they know this game. They don't ask for permission. They don't beg for validation. They command a room without raising their voice. You feel their presence before they speak. That's not charisma. That's not luck. That's discipline, strategy, and ruthlessness with their standards. You want that kind of power? Then you better start changing how you move through the world. First, the elite don't need to be liked. They need to be respected. And if you're still running around trying to keep everyone happy, you're playing the wrong game. The people who command respect have boundaries, so sharp they cut. You don't cross them without consequence. They don't over-explain, over-apologize, or shrink to make others feel comfortable. They understand that their energy is currency, and not everyone gets access. They don't talk too much. The 1% are intentional with their words. They speak when it matters. They make people lean in. Why? Because mystery breeds power. They don't explain their every move. They don't justify their dreams. They don't leak their fears to the world. You want to command respect. Stop broadcasting every emotion like it's entertainment. Control yourself, and others will instinctively begin to respect what you withhold. And let's be honest, you can't command respect when your life is a mess. The elite are in control of themselves first, physically, mentally, financially. You think someone will respect you if you don't respect your body. If your mornings start with chaos, your nights end in self-loathing, and you're constantly reacting instead of directing. No, respect starts with discipline. Wake up with intention, show up looking sharp, speak with clarity. Train your mind and body like they're weapons, because they are. They're not distracted. They're not impulsive. They're not swayed by trends. They aren't addicted to validation from social media or approval from strangers. The 1% don't follow the crowd. They move in silence and let their results talk loud. That kind of restraint, that's strength. That's why people stop and listen when they speak. Not because of what they say, but because of what they represent. Strength, precision, power. They also never tolerate disrespect. Not once, not from anyone. If someone talks over them, they reclaim the space. If someone lies, manipulates, or plays games, they walk away or shut it down. They don't tolerate disrespect in relationships, in business, in casual encounters. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow. The elite don't wait for others to see their worth. They enforce it, through action, not words. The 1% also master emotional control. You will never see them unravel in public. You won't see them beg, break down, or broadcast weakness. That doesn't mean they don't feel, but they process privately. Strength is in restraint, in choosing not to react, in holding your power when provoked. The people who command respect never let the world see them sweat. They hold the frame, calm, confident, composed. That's what creates trust. That's what makes others follow their lead. And here's a secret most people never tell you. Respect is repelled by desperation. The more you chase people, attention, or approval, the more you signal weakness. The 1% don't chase, they attract. Because their lives are so aligned, so focused, so dialed in, others naturally gravitate toward them. Not because they're loud, but because they're solid, reliable, unshakable. That's the energy people respect. That's what people follow. You want to command respect like the elite. Then your identity has to change. You don't get it by acting like everyone else. You don't get it by being soft, compliant, or agreeable all the time. You get it by owning your space, standing firm, walking like you've already won, because in your mind, you already have. That kind of conviction is rare. That's why it works. That's why people listen when the 1% speak. And remember, when you finally step into that power, when you stop explaining yourself, stop negotiating with disrespect, stop seeking approval, you will lose people. That's part of it. Weak minds will resent your strength, but the right ones will rise to meet it. The right ones will recognize your value before you say a word. This isn't just about respect. It's about who you are when no one's watching. It's about walking into every room like you belong, because you've done the work to deserve it. So stop shrinking. Stop waiting. Stop doubting and start moving like the 1%, because the world doesn't hand you respect, you take it. The moment you start seeking approval, you give away your power. And the 1%, they never do that. They don't walk into rooms wondering if people like them. They walk in knowing exactly who they are, what they bring to the table, and what they will not tolerate. They're not reckless, they're not rude, but they're unapologetic. That's the difference. You see, the majority of people spend their lives trying to be accepted, to be included, to avoid rejection. But the elite, they don't negotiate with their self-worth. They don't mold themselves to fit someone else's standards. They set the standards. You want to command respect. Start by enforcing your boundaries like your life depends on it. Because it does. People will test you. They will try to see how far they can push you. And if you fold, if you explain, if you hesitate, you've already lost. The 1% don't ask, "Is this okay with you?" They say, "This is what I allow. This is what I expect." And if someone can't meet that level, they're gone. No drama, no begging, no second chances. Because once someone shows you they're willing to cross the line, it's not your job to educate them. It's your job to eliminate them. Stop seeking approval in conversations. You don't need to over-explain why you made a decision. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth. The elite don't audition for respect. They embody it. That's why it comes to them. It's not arrogance. It's certainty. And that kind of certainty is magnetic. It silences noise. It intimidates the insecure. It attracts the powerful. But it starts when you stop waiting to be liked and start demanding to be respected. The 1% understand the weight of words. They don't talk just to fill silence. They don't blurt out thoughts hoping to be heard. When they speak, every word is intentional. Every sentence has direction. And because they don't say much when they do speak, people stop and listen. That's the kind of influence you build when your words are backed by clarity and restraint. The mistake most people make is thinking that respect comes from being the loudest in the room. But the elite know, it's the one who talks least and listens most who holds the power. You want to know why you're not commanding respect? You're giving away your leverage every time you overshare. Every time you explain your plan to people who haven't earned your trust. Every time you speak out of insecurity instead of confidence. You dilute your power when you can't hold your tongue. The 1% never expose everything. They reveal what's necessary. They never leak emotions that compromise their position. They don't talk about moves, they make them. They let people wonder. They let silence do the intimidating. They use speech as a tool, not a habit. And if you're still trying to earn respect by talking over people, defending every decision, justifying your value, you've missed the entire game. Power doesn't come from volume. It comes from presence, and presence is amplified by control. Say less, observe more. Deliver only when it matters. Let people feel the weight of your silence. That's how you shift the dynamic. That's how the 1% stay unforgettable. Because when they speak, every word lands with force. You cannot expect people to respect you if you don't respect yourself first. And that starts with discipline. The 1% are not chaotic. They don't wake up hoping the day goes right. They design their day. They own their time. They train their mind. They command their body. And it shows in how they walk, how they speak, how they lead. You want to know why the world takes them seriously. It's because they take themselves seriously. There's no power in a person who's always late, always distracted, always scrambling to catch up. That's not impressive. That's sloppy. And no one respects sloppy. Discipline isn't just about routines, it's about identity. The elite don't try to be sharp. They are sharp. From the way they dress to how they show up under pressure, everything is deliberate. They don't need to announce their worth. It's visible. It's obvious in how they carry themselves. While others are hitting snooze, making excuses, reacting emotionally, the 1% are already up, focused, locked in. That kind of consistency builds inner authority. That's what makes others look to you for leadership, even if you never ask for it. And if you think discipline is boring, ask yourself why chaos has never earned you the respect you crave. People watch how you treat yourself. If your diet is trash, your schedule is a mess, your space is disorganized, don't expect others to treat you with order. The outside reflects the inside. The 1% live with structure because it sharpens their mind. It creates clarity. It forces alignment. That's where the respect begins, not in what you say, but in how you live when no one's watching. Disrespect, even once tolerated, becomes permission, and the 1% never, ever allow that. They don't make excuses for people who cross the line. They don't stay quiet when someone talks down to them, mocks their vision, or disrespects their time. They correct it immediately, or they cut it off. Because here's the truth: the moment you let someone get away with treating you like less, you teach them that it's acceptable. You hand them the blueprint for how to mistreat you again. The elite don't play that game. They send a message loud and clear. You don't get a second shot at disrespecting me. It doesn't matter who it is, a friend, a partner, a boss, a stranger. The 1% don't hesitate to walk away. They don't need approval, and they don't fear loss, because they'd rather stand alone with their dignity than be surrounded by people who undermine it. That kind of standard scares people, but that's exactly why it commands respect. People can feel when you have a no-nonsense policy, when you've made a decision that your self-worth is non-negotiable. That's not ego. That's strength. That's clarity. Most people stay silent when they're disrespected because they don't want to seem difficult. But the elite, they'd rather be called difficult than be seen as weak, because what you tolerate once, you will tolerate again. And the more you allow it, the less people see you. The less they hear you. The less they care. Respect isn't about being liked. It's about making it clear that you will not coexist with anyone who doesn't know how to treat you right. That boundary becomes your armor. That line you draw, that's where your power begins. You ever seen someone lose it in public? Completely unravel, voice rising, hands flailing, face flushed, throwing their emotions around like confetti. It's uncomfortable to watch. And you know what's worse? It's weak. People think showing all your feelings, all the time, makes you authentic. It doesn't. It makes you vulnerable to the wrong people. The 1%, they understand this. They don't leak. They don't explode. They don't hand over their power to anyone who provokes them. Because emotional control is not about suppression. It's about precision. It's about knowing when to react, and when to never give someone that satisfaction. The people who command the most respect aren't the ones yelling the loudest. They're the ones you can't shake. The ones who stay composed under pressure. Who stay calm when insulted. Who stay silent when others try to trigger them. Because that silence isn't weakness. It's dominance. It says, you don't get to control me. The elite don't play emotional ping pong with people who want to drag them down. They don't match chaos with chaos. They don't mirror other people's outbursts. They lead with composure, and that composure builds trust. That's what makes people want to follow them. Because if you can't manage yourself, why would anyone believe you can manage anything else? And make no mistake, emotional control is a skill. It's not something you're born with. You build it by catching yourself before you react, by observing your triggers and refusing to be a slave to them. The 1% do this in every interaction. When someone disrespects them, they don't spiral. They don't clap back just to prove they're not weak. They look that person dead in the eye with full composure and say nothing. Or they say exactly what needs to be said with surgical precision. That restraint is terrifying to people who expect a reaction. Because when you can't be provoked, you're unpredictable. And unpredictability is power. You've probably heard it. Don't let them see you sweat. But let's go deeper. The 1% don't even feel sweat, because they've trained themselves to master the storm inside. They've been through worse. They've been disrespected, underestimated, challenged, and instead of collapsing, they got sharper. They practiced poise. Emotional discipline. That doesn't mean they don't feel. They do. They feel everything. But they decide how and when to show it. That's leadership. That's control. And that's exactly why others respect them. Look around. Most people react instantly. They scream at customer service, lash out on social media, argue with strangers, and call it standing up for themselves. No, that's just emotional exposure. That's losing ground. You don't fight every battle. You don't argue to be right. The elite are strategic with their energy. If it won't serve them in the long game, they don't engage. They let the loud ones burn themselves out. While the rest of the world plays checkers, they're already 5 moves ahead on the chessboard. You want to command respect. Stop trying to prove a point every time you feel something. Not everything deserves your reaction. Not every insult needs a response. Not every slight needs to be addressed in the moment. Sometimes the most powerful move is to hold your ground in silence. To look someone in the eye and let them see that they didn't get to you. Because what that tells the world is this person is in control. That's when they start respecting you, not when you dominate others, but when you dominate yourself. The 1% know that reputation is built in private, but revealed in moments of pressure. How you handle stress, confrontation, humiliation, that's when your character is truly exposed, and when you can stay poised in the chaos. People don't just see discipline, they see leadership. They see someone who can be trusted, someone who can be followed, someone who can lead under fire. That's not something you can fake. It comes from practice. It comes from choosing, every day, to stay calm when it would be easier to lash out. That's how you build your edge. Think about the most respected people in your life. The ones who seem unshakable. They're not the ones shouting for attention. They're the ones whose calm feels almost eerie. The ones who can say no without explanation. Who can sit through chaos without flinching. Who can hear criticism and not react. That's not by accident. That's training. You think they didn't want to yell back. You think they didn't feel rage, fear, sadness. Of course they did, but they didn't hand that power over to anyone. They protected it like it was sacred. Because it is. Your ability to manage your emotions is the foundation of respect. You can be brilliant, skilled, successful, but if you lose it under pressure, people will never trust you with more. Emotional control shows maturity. It shows security. It shows that you've done the internal work. And that energy, it radiates. People want to be around it. They feel safer in your presence. They trust your judgment, and most of all, they respect you. Now, if you're still reacting to every comment, every stare, every tone of voice, you need to ask yourself, why am I so easily triggered? Why am I still letting people dictate my mood, my peace, my worth? Because the truth is, the person who controls your emotions controls you. And that's not how the 1% operate. They decide how they feel. They decide what gets to affect them. They don't give away control for free. You have to earn it. Start paying attention to your reactions. When someone offends you, pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, what do I gain by responding? If it's not elevating you, empowering you, or strengthening your position, let it go. Not because you're weak, but because you're in control. Because you don't need to prove yourself to someone operating beneath your level. That's the standard. That's the discipline, and that's what separates those who demand respect from those who chase it. So the next time someone tests you, don't panic, don't lash out, don't crumble, stand still, breathe, own the moment. That's the posture of the elite. That's the edge you need. Not more words, not more noise, more control. Because once you learn how to hold your power, no one can take it from you. The 1% don't broadcast their plans. They move in silence, and that silence is their armor. While everyone else is busy showing off, proving themselves, trying to impress people who don't even matter, the elite are building in the dark. They're working while you're posting. They're strategizing while others are bragging. Because they understand a truth most people never learn. When you announce your every move, you invite resistance. You give people a chance to sabotage you, to doubt you, to compete with you. But when you keep it quiet, no one sees you coming. And that's surprise. That's power. You want to be respected. Let your results speak. Not your mouth, not your ego, not your need to be seen. Let people see the transformation, not the process. Don't explain your grind. Don't justify your focus. The loud ones need attention to validate their worth. The powerful ones don't need to say a word. They show up with receipts. They make moves so clean, so effective, that by the time anyone notices, they've already won. And the ones who doubted them, they're too late. The 1% understand the discipline of silence. They know how to protect their energy from being diluted by unnecessary exposure. They don't reveal their insecurities online. They don't document every failure, every moment of doubt, every pivot in their strategy. They keep their emotions close and their mission even closer. Because when you show too much, you give too much. You lose your edge, you lose your mystique, and make no mistake, mystery is leverage. It's not about being secretive. It's about being strategic. There's a difference. The elite don't hide because they're afraid. They stay quiet because they're focused. They don't need the crowd's reaction to know they're on the right path. They trust their vision. They trust their execution. They trust that the world will catch up after the results are undeniable. And when they speak, it's never to announce what they will do. It's to confirm what they've already done. Most people are addicted to validation. They post every move, every plan, every win, hoping someone will clap for them. But here's the truth. The more you talk about it, the less people take you seriously. Because talk is cheap. Real power is quiet. Real focus doesn't need an audience. You don't get respected for your potential. You get respected for what you produce. The 1% understand that deeply. They don't hype themselves up. They let their actions scream for them. And when they win, because they always do, they don't rub it in. They don't scream, "I told you so." They just keep moving. Because the respect they command isn't built on one victory. It's built on consistency, on restraint, on the ability to execute without the need for attention. That's what makes them unstoppable. That's what makes people talk about them, even when they're not in the room. That's the presence you want. Not loud, not messy, not attention-hungry, but undeniable. That kind of respect, it comes when you master the art of silent execution. The 1% don't wake up and hope the day treats them kindly. They command their day before the world has a chance to touch it. They're not stumbling out of bed, checking their phones, reacting to noise. They move with precision because purpose doesn't happen by accident. They have structure. And that structure is their power. If your life is ruled by reaction, scrolling, distractions, rushing, then you're not in control. You're letting the world pull your strings. And if you don't lead your day, someone else will. That's how most people live, being direct, not directing. The elite start their day with clarity, not clutter. Their morning isn't chaos, it's calculated. They know what their priorities are. They don't waste time debating what to do next. They've already decided. Because indecision is a luxury for people who don't care about results. The 1% don't have lazy mornings. They don't leave room for randomness. Their routines are locked in, not because they're robotic, but because they know that freedom is born from structure. When your day is built around purpose, distractions lose their grip. You stop chasing, and you start leading. Most people confuse busy with productive. They spend the day checking boxes that don't move them forward. Meetings, calls, errands, notifications. And by the end of it, they're exhausted and empty. But the elite, they're not busy. They're intentional. Every move they make is aligned with their bigger vision. They don't just ask, "What do I need to do today?" They ask, "What do I need to become?" That's the difference. That mindset shift, from doing to becoming, is what creates authority. When you're constantly reacting, you're always behind. But when you live with structure, you're always one step ahead. Their environment is clean, their schedule is clear, their mind is sharp. They eliminate chaos before it can creep in. They don't wait until things spiral to take control. They build systems that prevent spirals in the first place. That kind of structure doesn't restrict them. It frees them. It gives them space to think, to lead, to execute with clarity. And clarity is power. Because when you know exactly where you're going, and exactly what it takes to get there, people feel that. They sense it in your walk, in your tone, in the way you say no without hesitation. Structure creates consistency, and consistency creates trust. That's why the 1% are respected. They don't show up strong once in a while. They show up sharp every day, even when no one's watching. Especially when no one's watching. Because they understand that greatness isn't built in big moments. It's forged in the small, daily decisions that no one claps for. Getting up on time. Finishing the workout. Blocking out the noise. Keeping the promises they made to themselves. That's where confidence comes from. And when you're confident, you don't chase respect. It follows you. People respect what they can rely on. And the elite are reliable. Not just to others, but to themselves. They don't make excuses. They don't negotiate with laziness. They don't wait to feel motivated. They follow structure like a weapon, because they know the world doesn't slow down for the unprepared. If you're still waking up hoping the day brings you energy, inspiration, clarity, you're already behind. The 1% don't hope. They plan. They execute. They dominate their schedules so no one else can. If you want to command respect, it starts with how you command yourself. You can't walk into a room with presence if you've been living in chaos. You can't expect people to follow your lead if your own life is unstructured. The world can smell inconsistency. It can sense when you don't have control. And respect, it disappears the moment people realize you're winging it. The elite never wing it. They build a system, they follow it, and they win not because they're more talented, but because they're more aligned, more intentional, more disciplined with their time, their space, and their purpose. Respect doesn't show up when you need it. It shows up when you've earned it through relentless structure. That structure gives you posture. And that posture, that's what shifts the room. You can't fake presence. Either you have it or you don't, and the 1% have it before they even speak. The moment they walk in, the energy changes, not because they're loud, not because they're flashy, but because they own their space. They don't slouch. They don't shrink. They're not scanning the room to see who approves of them. They walk like they belong, because in their mind, they already do. That kind of confidence doesn't need to be announced. It's felt, and people pick up on it instantly, because presence isn't about performance. It's about certainty. When someone with true presence steps into the room, they don't need to chase attention. It gravitates to them. Why? Because people feel safe around certainty. They trust composure. They're drawn to strength that doesn't need to prove itself. And that's what the percent carry. They're grounded. They're focused. Their energy is clean. No desperation. No chaos. No insecurity bleeding into every word. They've done the inner work, and it shows on the outside. Most people think presence is about what you say, but it's not. It's how you sit, how you stand, how you look at someone without flinching. It's how you listen without interrupting. It's how you breathe, how you move, how you carry yourself when nobody's watching. The elite have trained themselves to own every space they walk into, not by dominating it, but by refusing to shrink. They don't let nerves run the show. They don't let anxiety speak first. They walk in calm, controlled sharp. And that control creates influence. And here's what most presence is: a discipline. It's not natural. It's practiced. You don't get presence from reading quotes or listening to hype. You get it from showing up every day with intention, from sharpening your tone, from cleaning up your posture, from handling yourself with grace even when things go sideways. The 1% know that every moment is a message. How you enter the room is a message. How you grate someone is a message. How you respond when challenged, that's a message. And every message either builds respect or destroys it. They're not worried about being liked. They're not performing for attention. They're locked into purpose. And that purpose radiates off them. When they speak, people listen. Not because they're louder, but because their energy tells the room, I don't need your approval to stand here. That's what shifts the dynamic. That's what puts people on alert. Because presence like that is rare, and anything rare is instantly respected. If you walk in timid, hesitant, second-guessing yourself, the room will read that. People will treat you according to the energy you carry. That's why the 1% spend less time trying to look confident, and more time being prepared. When you've done the work, when you know your value, when your habits match your ambition, your presence speaks louder than your words ever could. You don't have to say, respect me. You simply stand there and it happens. People follow people who are sure of themselves, not arrogant, not theatrical, just rooted. Clear, solid, that's what presence is, and you build it by doing the hard, quiet things every day. Keeping your word, staying ready, training your body, strengthening your mind. You build it when no one's watching. But when the moment comes, when you step into that room, you don't have to try to command respect. You become the reason the entire room shifts. The 1% don't chase people. They don't run after attention, affection, or approval. They attract everything they want because of who they are, not because of what they're begging for. You can't command respect when your energy is desperate. When you're constantly seeking validation, asking for reassurance, trying to be seen, you've already placed yourself below the very people you're trying to impress. The elite never move like that. They understand one thing very clearly: what's meant for them comes to them. Not because they sit back and wait, but because they've become undeniable. The most powerful people in the world don't need to explain themselves. They don't need to say, "Pick me." Their presence, their discipline, their standards already speak for them. They attract quality relationships, opportunities, influence. Because their life reflects quality. They don't chase people. They chase mastery. And when you chase mastery, people feel that. It pulls them in. It makes them respect you without you asking for it. And here's the hard truthing: the more you chase someone or something, the more you tell it you don't believe you're worthy of it unless it chooses you back. That's why the 1% don't chase anyone. Not in business, not in friendship, not in love. They lead. They move forward. They grow. And those who are aligned with that mission, they come closer. The rest fall away. And they're fine with that, because they'd rather walk alone with purpose than chase people who are moving in the opposite direction. People confuse attention with respect. They want likes, followers, applause, and they think that equals influence. But it doesn't. Real influence doesn't chase the crowd. It creates its own lane. The 1% are so focused on their path that they don't even notice who's watching. They're not performing. They're not pleasing. They're becoming. And in that process, they become magnetic, not to everyone, but to the right ones, to the people who operate on the same frequency, to those who recognize power, not in noise, but in stillness, not in begging, but in conviction. You don't need to make everyone see your worth. That's not your job. Your job is to be worthy, to build yourself into something so focused, so grounded, so self-sufficient that the idea of chasing anyone feels laughable. The elite don't have time to chase. They're too busy building the kind of life people want to be part of. And that's the shift. When you stop running their people and start running after purpose, everything begins to change. People notice. They respect you. Because your energy no longer says, "I need you to complete me." It says, "I'm already whole. Join me or step aside." Respect comes to those who hold their own, who don't fold under pressure, who don't sell themselves cheap just to be chosen. The 1% attract everything because they've learned how to be enough without it. That's the difference. That's the edge. That's the posture of someone who knows their value and refuses to chase what's beneath it. The 1% don't wait for permission to take up space. They don't ask, "Is this okay?" or "Do I have the right to want this?" They move with conviction. When they walk into a room, it's not arrogance. It's certainty. You can feel it. And that certainty doesn't come from being the loudest or the most aggressive. It comes from the internal decision that I belong here. Not because someone said so, but because I've done the work to become the person who does. Most people are still stuck waiting for someone to validate them. They need a boss to believe in them before they lead, a friend to encourage them before they act, a society to approve of them before they step up. But the elite don't wait for that. They don't need an audience to activate their power. They're self-issued, self-validated. They decide their worth first, and everything they do flows from that internal standard. That's how you command respect. You live from the conviction that you're already enough, already capable, already worthy of everything you're pursuing. When the world questions them, they don't flinch. They don't explain themselves into exhaustion trying to prove a point. They let their consistency, their execution, and their results do the talking. That's what makes people pay attention. Not because they're demanding respect, but because they're living it. And that kind of self-possession, it's intimidating. It makes insecure people uncomfortable. But that discomfort is the price of standing in your power. The people who wait to be chosen never lead. They hesitate, they hold back, they soften their voice to fit in. But respect doesn't come from shrinking. It comes from declaring, not loudly, but unshakably, who you are and where you're going. The 1% don't need applause at every step. They're not trying to convince the room. They're already operating like the person they want to become. And that alignment is what makes people respect them before they even open their mouth. Conviction doesn't mean you never doubt. It means you act even when you do. The elite still face fear, still encounter resistance. But they move anyway. They don't get stuck analyzing who might disagree or who might leave. They understand that respect often looks like isolation at first. It looks like walking alone with your head high, saying no without guilt, drawing lines others won't like. But that's the difference between the respected and the ignored. The ones who stand still waiting for a sign, and the ones who become the sign. When you move with conviction, people feel it. They may not understand you, they may not even like you, but they'll respect you, because conviction makes people uncomfortable. But it also makes them pay attention. It's rare, it's bold, it doesn't ask, it asserts. And when you finally decide to live from that place, you stop chasing respect. You embody it. If you want to command respect like the 1%, you have to become the kind of person who no longer begs for it. It's not about being louder, tougher, or more visible. It's about becoming undeniable. That means mastering your emotions, enforcing your boundaries, protecting your time, and moving with discipline, structure, and certainty. You stop chasing people and start attracting what aligns. You stop explaining and start executing. You stop asking for permission and start living with conviction. Respect doesn't come from what you say. It comes from how you live. And when your habits, presence, energy, and standards reflect power, people don't question your worth. They recognize it. So don't wait for the world to respect you. Show them who you are. Then make it impossible for them to forget.